Good afternoon from a rainy Innsbruck. It's not too warm in Tyrol. We had a few spring days recently, but it looks like that, in a sense, winter's coming back. However, welcome to a rainy Tyrol from Innsbruck to this issue of the Experts Online series, where we're talking about microphone directionality. Microphone directionality? What's the best for children? My name is Peter Nopp. I'm one of the directors in R&D at MED-EL headquarters in Innsbruck, and I will be chairing the Experts Online session today. Before we get right into the matter, let me just introduce you to a few tips and tricks when it comes to best receiving the signal and getting the best quality, at least in terms of audio video, out of this session. Please name yourself in Zoom. That is, click on your name in the participants panel and click on more and then rename and then name yourself so that the other people in the room, in the auditorium, so to speak, who you are or know who you are, and so that you get to know each other in a sense. Then, to avoid background noise, please mute your microphone if you don't speak, and mute your phone, please. Put your phone on quiet. Don't receive or answer any calls, at least as long as your microphone is open. And for a stable internet connection, close all other programs on your device, if possible. Your comments and questions are welcome, and on the lower right corner of the slide you see where to comment and ask questions. That in the Zoom chat. So if you want to ask a question, if you want to leave a comment, please do so in the Zoom chat. I will see your comments later, or Harry, my assistant, will read those comments to me, especially when it then comes to the Q&A session. Please do ask questions. Please be active. Don't be shy. Any question is allowed. And for those who are not that fluent in English or have some hearing problems, we have closed captioning available on the lower part of the screen. If you click on the CC button, then you will see automatic closed captioning as provided by Zoom, I think. Automatically. Okay, in order to make a start, we'll start with 2 Mentimeter questions. The first question is more or less to let everybody know who you are, and the second question then has to do with the matter, at least to some extent. Now, to get into Mentimeter, which is a voting and a response tool, an online voting and response tool, please either scan the QR code in the lower right corner of the slide, or enter the code that you're seeing there on the menti.com webpage manually. Please do so now. If you do so, then you're getting into the Menti portal, where you can see the first question. And the first question really is just text. What's your background? What's your professional background? Are you a surgeon? Are you an audiologist? Are you a therapist? An engineer? Technician? Whatever is your background, so that we know, the profile, at least the average profile of people in the audience. Okay, we have audiologist, speech therapist, engineer. Don't be shy, please. 1 more minute. The font size stands for the number of responses with the respective word, so to say, or identifier. Okay, most people are from the audiology side, audiologist. Then we have software engineers, clinical engineers, engineers in general, and speech therapists. Okay, so most importantly, or most obviously, we don't have any surgeon in the auditorium. Good. And the next question is about the matter. The matter of this Audiology Online is directional microphones in CIs in children. And the next question just is, do you use directional microphones in children in general? Response options are just yes and no. It's not about what directional microphone you're using. It's just directional microphones, yes or no. So this is directional versus omnidirectional, basically. So we have more people who are on the directional microphone side than people who are on the omnidirectional microphone side. Okay. Good. Then let's get to our two experts today. We have, sorry, no, I'll have another slide first. Can I see my directionality slide? In order to make those people familiar in the audience with the MED-EL directional modes, who are working with maybe other brands, this is what our two experts today will be mainly referring to. And that's the directionality modes in ASM3, in what at MED-EL we call Automatic Sound Management 3. There is 3.5 modes, basically. Omnidirectional is just omnidirectional, treating sounds from all directions equally. And on the right side, you can see the respective polar plot in free field. So this is the speech processor not on somebody's head, but in free field. And then in the middle, natural directionality, which models the natural pinna directionality. And then thirdly, adaptive directionality, which is a directionality pattern that changes over time or can change over time, depending on where the disturbing noise sources are in the back hemisphere of the user. Omnidirectional and natural directionality are fixed directionality modes. Adaptive directionality is, as the term says, adaptive in both frequency and time, so that whatever comes in from the back hemisphere is optimally suppressed. So that's the 3 directionality modes that we are offering in the MED-EL system in a really broad overlook, and that's the 3 directionality modes that our 2 experts will be mainly referring to. Okay, and that's the experts we have invited for today. We have Dr. Verena Müller from the Head and Neck Surgery Clinic at the University of Cologne in Germany, and she's technical director of the implant program there. And we have Dr. Anita Obrycka from the Institute of Physiology and Pathology of Hearing in Poland, which is one of the largest cochlear implant centers in the world. And she's a cochlear implant specialist in the cochlear implant program at this institute in Poland. So let me just say hello to both of you, Dr. Müller and Dr. Obrycka. And we'll start with Dr. Müller. Dr. Müller, both of those experts have released, as I think, important papers in terms of directionality and in terms of cochlear implants in children in the last year. And that was the starting point for us at MED-EL to think that that is really something that should be discussed in an experts online session. And that's why we have those people here. And that's why we are all gathering today. Okay, Dr. Verena Müller will make a start, and she'll be talking about speech perception in noise and sound localization using different microphone modes in pediatric bilateral cochlear implant user. Dr. Müller, please.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. I just have to share my screen.
Okay.
Okay, can you see it?
Yep, we can see. Yep.
Oh, okay. Then, yeah, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to present my study that we did some years ago, actually. And we did a study with experienced bilaterally implanted children who were so that's audio processor from MED-EL. And we wanted to investigate if the use of a directional microphone, thus the natural or the pinna imitating microphone, improves speech perception and noise and localization abilities compared to the use of the omnidirectional mode. And why were we interested in that? Because I will give you a quick background. Because children spend a minimum of 30% of their time in noisy surroundings, such as a school, classroom, or in real life in situations with a lot of noise and talkers. And if you see those two pictures, it's not only that on the left side that they are taking part in the lesson and the others are quiet, but you have mostly the situations that there is surrounding noise, they making fun, they are talking. And so you have unfavorable signal to noise ratios. And studies with normal hearing peers showed that they needed much more than 15 dB more SNR than do adults of normal hearing persons. And with a cochlear implant, such environments are even harder, and perhaps directionality might help them in these situations. But when it is like in normal hearing listeners, we cannot adopt the results from the normal hearing, the CI patients that we have when we do the studies with adults. So we made them with the bilateral children, and we used for the speech perception and noise, we used the Oldenburg sentence test for children. The abbreviation in German is OLKISA. The OLKISA uses phrases of 3 words, which have to be repeated by the child. And it's always the structure you see here. It's a number, an adjective, and a noun. And for each position, 10 possible words exist, and they can be combined at random, so that you have phrases like 8 wet rings or 8 heavy flowers, 4 wet stones, or something like that. And we did a training measurement in quiet with these phrases. And after that, we presented the speech in noise, and we tested 4 conditions. We always presented the speech from the front, and the noise, that's the all noise that's typical for the OLKISA. It has the same long-term spectrum as the speech, but is quite stationary. And this was coming from the front as well, or from the right, from the left, or from behind. For the localization test, we used the AIR-key, that's the abbreviation. It's the assessment of directional hearing in children. And here you can see the setup. You have 5 real loudspeakers from minus 90 degrees to plus 90 degrees. And they are arranged in a semicircle in front of the patient. And the radius is 1 meter, but we are not using only those real loudspeakers. You can create virtual sound sources with the AIR-key. And that is that 2 adjacent loudspeakers emit attenuated signals. So you have a loudspeaker level difference, or you have a time delay, so you can create the loudspeaker time difference. And with that, you have 37 sound sources with a resolution of 5 degrees. Then you have a visual projection. This visual projection is sound transparent. So this should avoid that the children only point to the real loudspeakers. And so the sound localization is affected by that. And then you have an LED bar, and there is a light before the stimulus comes up. The light comes from the right and from the left and goes to the front, so that the attention is towards the front, and then the stimulus occurs. And the children get a rotary control, and they have to turn a light on this LED bar to the position where they thought they perceived the sound. Then they can confirm it, and then the next stimulus occurs. This two tests we did with 50 bilaterally implanted children who wore the Sonnet audio processor. Their mean age was 8 years and 8 months. Age at implantation for the first site was around 1.5 years. And the age at second implantation was approximately 1 year later. The average time between the first and the second implantation was around 9 months, but they had a great TE experience, so they with a mean of 7 years. And the majority of the children used the FSP strategy. So the procedure was the following. We fitted the Sonnet and activated with the omnidirectional microphone. Then they could go home for 2 weeks and test this. And then they come back to the clinic, and we made the measurements that I just told you about, the Otorhinolaryngology and the air key. And then we made a crossover to the natural or directional microphone mode without any changes in fitting. It was just the microphone mode. Then they used this for 2 weeks, and after that they came to the clinic again, and we made the same measurements with the natural microphone. And as I just said, we used the Otorhinolaryngology in noise in these 4 conditions, and the initial level was 65 dB, and it was adaptively. The air key, the sound localization test, we used pink noise with 300 milliseconds, and we used the loudspeaker level difference because we know that the time differences are not that good perceived by CI users. And we presented all of those stimuli we can, the 37 one, thus we presented a noise from every possible position. So here are the results for the speech perception and noise test for the 4 conditions, as you can see, and the speech reception threshold. As you know, the more negative, the better the speech understanding is. And in light gray, you have the results for the omnidirectional microphone. And in the dark gray, it's the natural microphone mode. And what we saw is that in all conditions that we tested, we had a benefit or improvement in speech perception. And it varies around 2 to 5 dB. For the localization tests, you can see here is on the x-axis is the target degrees from -90 to +90 degrees. And on the y-axis is, you can see the responses. And what would be good is if all the points were on the diagonal. And we were quite surprised that it was quite good for the front, around -50 to +40, 50 degrees. It was okay. But when you look for the sound localization at the sides, that was not so good, but that was for both, for the omnidirectional and for the natural mode. but it seems there is a difference. So we made another calculation, and we measured or calculated the root mean square error. That's the localization error. It's the deviation between the indicated sound source, so the response, and the actual sound source of the stimulus actually came from. And we saw a significant benefit for the natural microphone mode, in that the error was a little bit smaller, about 10 degrees smaller than with the omnidirectional mode. So to conclude, what we saw in our study was that the directional microphone mode results in an improvement in speech perception for all tested conditions, and an improvement in localization abilities. And based on our results, we recommend and we use the natural microphone setting now as a standard in children. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Müller, very interesting. Now let's see what they found in Poland. We'll hear next the talk by Dr. Anita Obrycka on the advantage of microphone directionality for speech discrimination in noise. She also presented on children last year in terms of directionality. So let's see what she has to say. Can you share, please? Okay, good.
After the natural directionality in MED-EL systems were available, a few studies were conducted showing, I have some delay, I think. I cannot change my slides. Okay. Several studies were conducted showing that the using of the natural microphone can be beneficial in terms of speech understanding in noisy environment, especially when noise was presented at the back of the patient. And it is clearly visible in this study by Müller that when the signal and noise were presented in front of patients, there were no differences were noticed between omnidirectional mode and natural mode, and when signal or no, and when the noise was presented to the side, and then the advantage of using natural microphone appeared from one side and from the other side, and it was especially visible when the noise was presented at the back. So the benefit from the natural microphone was the biggest when the speech was presented in front of patient and noise from the back. So encouraged by those studies, we decided to conduct a similar study in children, and because all those previous studies were conducted in adults, and we decided to evaluate the advantage of microphone directionality, especially advantage of the natural microphone over omnidirectional microphone in SONET 2 in pediatric population. And we did our study during the upgrades of the speech processor, and we published that results in the last year. And in our study, we tested 36 children, sorry, and they were upgraded from Opus 2 to SONET 2, and they all have bilateral profound sensorineural hearing loss. They were all unilateral CI users, and they were also experienced users because they at least use their previous processor for 5 years. And for some of children, it was their second, for example, processor or third. So the mean age at testing was 10 years, and no children with additional disabilities were included. And what we decided to test this condition when the effect is the mostly visible. So the speech was presented in front of patient and noise at the back. And we use adaptive auditory speech test. It is test organized like a computer game. So there's 6 words and 6 pictures. So children have to listen to the word and point the picture which is related to the sound, to the word spoken via loudspeaker. And this is also adaptive procedure for the testing. So the result is speech reception threshold. We tested our patients in 3 conditions: in old Opus 2 speech processor with omnidirectional microphone, of course, and in Sonnet 2 with omnidirectional microphone, and with Sonnet 2 with natural directionality. And it was not like in the previous study conducted by Verena. We did acute testing of our patients. So we just convert the speech processor map into speech processor Opus 2 map to Sonnet 2 without any changes, without any improvements. And we switch the same program with omnidirectional microphones and with natural microphone. And what we obtained in our study, so for the Opus 2, we got the minus 12 dB SNR speech reception threshold. For the omnidirectional mode, the result minus 11 was not significantly different from the Opus 2. And for natural microphone, we obtained a significant difference of 3.7 or 2.7, depending if we are comparing with Opus 2 or Sonnet, advantage over the previous speech processors. Encouraged by those results, we also did some testing with another group of 20 children also during the upgrade from Opus 2 to Sonnet 2. Also bilateral experienced CI users without additional disabilities. And we tested them only with the Sonnet 2 microphone, omnidirectional mode, with natural directionality, and also we switched one program with adaptive intelligence. And also we used the same test and the same configuration of speech and noise, speech from front and noise from the back. And what we obtained, the omnidirectional mode was around minus 11 dB SNR, natural and adaptive around minus 15. And there was no significant differences between natural and adaptive mode, natural microphone and adaptive mode. And this is very important also for us for validating the previous results. The same almost result in other group with omnidirectional microphone in Sonnet 2 as we got from previous study group, around 11. And also similar results for natural microphone. And when we look at the settings for the adaptive intelligence, we switch, of course, the mild, we use the mild setting for the adaptive intelligence. So when we look at that speech in noise, it is natural microphone option switched on, and wind noise reduction and ambient and transient noise reductions are set to mild mode. And probably we can't see the difference in the adaptive intelligence comparing to natural only mode, because our test is performed in the way that we have a piece of silence, and then we have noise, and together with the noise word is presented, and then there is another break with silence. So we think that if the noise is somehow continuous, maybe those adaptive intelligence could be also possible to notice the benefit from that. And of course, it is very difficult in the clinical setting to judge such a adaptive solutions. Therefore, we decided to encourage our patients to use the adaptive intelligence, and we decided to use the questionnaires to assess the benefit. And we noticed the significant benefit in the hearing implant sound quality index questionnaire, and we have also some improvement in audio processor satisfaction questionnaire, not in total score, not in comfort and usability, because it's quite the same kind of processor, only behind the ear processor. So the comfort and usability are probably similar, but we noticed the improvement in the social life dimension, which is very encouraging. And of course, it could be due to the new feature of the sound processor, I mean this adaptive intelligence or directional microphone, or maybe also this change could be due to the fact that all children are having a completely brand new speech processor, so the previous one could be somehow also not in a very good condition. So we are not exactly sure why, what is the reason for that difference. We hope that, of course, but in overall, the new speech processor was beneficial for patients. And to conclude, I would like to say that children obtain a significant improvement in performance with their speech processor is upgraded to new technology with the new front-end features such as directional microphones, noise reduction systems, and scene analysis algorithms. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to both of the experts. So what we've heard from Dr. Müller and Dr. Obrycka is basically, if I can summarize, speech microphone directionality does provide benefits in speech perception, in terms of speech perception in children. We've also seen that adaptive intelligence that uses natural directionality also provides and preserves, of course, those advantages, and that all in all also questionnaire results are in favor of directional microphones in children. But still, as far as we heard, there are still reservations, and we have time to discuss those questions later in the session. Thank you very much again. Okay, before we go into the Q&A, there is two more things we need to do. The first one is a fun thingy that is more or less a tradition in expert online sessions, and that's the group photo. So the group photo in online days is a bit dry. And what we'd like to ask you is switch on your camera. The engineers in the room that are with me will then arrange all of the pictures on the screen, and then just do a screenshot. And that's what's called the group photo today. Okay, can you let me know when you are done? Okay, now smile, cheese. Done? Okay, done. Can we see the result? No, you can't see the result. I don't know why, but we can't see the result. But it'll be posted with the talk on the MED-EL Academy or wherever they are posting these things. We'll send out information. So that was the group photo. The second thing, again, before the Q&A and leading into the Q&A, is another Mentimeter question. Hang on, another Mentimeter question. Why can't I proceed? Okay, another Mentimeter question. So again, go on Mentimeter. Either, again, if you're not on Mentimeter anymore, either scan the QR code in the back in the left lower corner on this slide, or enter the code. And then the question is, thank you for answering already, what's your preferred microphone mode in children? Please just use the term that you are used from the product that you use. So if you're using one of the competitor products, then it's maybe Zoom or Super Zoom or whatever it's called there. Really, don't be shy. If you're using either the Cochlear or the AB system, please just enter the term, yes, scan. Please just enter the term that is used there. And we all know the three systems that are on the market, at least to a degree, so that we know what is what. So scan is very similar to MED-EL, or is basically the Cochlear version for the MED-EL adaptive intelligence, although there are differences, but it is switching the front end based on a signal analysis. So there are in a sense a few AI users, AI/scan. And then there are quite a few natural and omni users, or omnidirectional. That's the same thing. So omni and omnidirectional go together. Omni and omnidirectional go together and are probably on par with natural. If we take omni in young children, omnidirectional and omni together, that's maybe the same share as for natural. And then we have a few AI users, a few scan users, and a few super fancy Zoom users, although I don't know where we are now in terms of super fancy Zoom. Can the person who has entered super fancy Zoom just maybe type into the chat if you want what that is? Is that AB Zoom, or there is Zoom in the Cochlear system, as far as I know. I can't remember whether there is something that's called Zoom in the AB system. However, okay, so it's basically natural or omni, and then a few AI/scan. So that should be a really interesting discussion. Is there anything in the chat already? Can I ask? Right? Okay. Then I'll just push on the question to the two experts to make a start. Verena, Anita, what's your preferred microphone mode and why?
Yeah, I can start. As I just said in my presentation, we choose the natural setting as a standard. And we don't only use it for the bilaterally implanted children, but also for the unilateral children, because we did the study also with unilateral children, implanted children, but there were not so many that we could do the statistics, but also they benefited in all those conditions. And I think it's perhaps more important for them than for the bilaterally implanted children, because they don't have access to binaural processing and cannot take advantage of spatial separation between speech and noise. And it might be even better for them to use this technique. So that's our standard. Yeah.
Okay, can I just ask quickly back? So you're using natural, so that means in the Sonnet 2, you're not using AI, but you're using natural fixed, basically, right?
Natural fixed, yes.
Okay. Anita?
We are using also natural microphones for young children, babies, and as well as for adults. And we are starting to use also adaptive intelligence. because this, I think, adaptive in the adaptive feature in this mild setting is not very aggressive, let's say, but still we are going to conduct some more studies on that. And of course, for upgraded children, we encourage them to at least try the adaptive intelligence, and they are mostly, but for experienced users, we are also we just advise them to use adaptive intelligence, and they're mostly staying with the adaptive intelligence.
Okay, now the interesting thing really is that, you know, if we look into what we've seen before, you know, the audience is somehow split, maybe 50-50. You know, if we leave aside the few AI/scan and the super fancy Zoom, I guess, is some form of natural maybe, or fixed beamformer, or adaptive, but directional, right? So we have a split basically between omnidirectional and directional in young children, which is also what I've heard from clinics when I travel around. Now, can I ask the audience, would one of the omnidirectional users, or one of those audiologists out there who uses omnidirectional in children, want to offer or comment on his or her opinion? They can also switch on their microphones, right, Harry? So please, if you want, don't feel obliged, but if you want, please switch on your microphone and just speak. If you're one of the omnidirectional, if you're from the omnidirectional fraction, so to speak, would you want to share your opinion? Why omnidirectional in young children? Let's see if somebody shows up. Would we be able to see or hear that person, right? Is there somebody? Okay. Okay. Let's wait another. Is there anything? Okay. Yes, I am using the Omni only when the. Can you make that larger? Okay.
BTE.
Only if the child's ear is too weak to wear the BTE. Okay. Okay. So you mean that you are fixing the sound processor on the collar, right? Am I getting that right? Right. Okay. So in what we call, or what's sometimes called the baby option, right? Where you have a long cable or a longer cable between the coil and the processor, and then you fix the sound processor on the child's collar. Well, I guess that makes sense, right? So the directional mode for working, really the directional mode relies on the two microphones being, you know, in front-back direction. That's then when the directional mode, so to speak, points into the right direction, namely towards the front. And when the sound process somewhere fixed on the collar or somewhere else on the child, then exactly, a directional microphone is not a good choice. I would think. Is there another opinion out there or another use case out there when it comes to Omni? No. Okay. Can I ask the two experts, is that a use case you are also having in your clinic? The baby BTE sort of thing for very small children? Verena, Anita, anyone?
We are trying to encourage children to use the processor behind the ear.
Okay.
There are some exceptions, but very, very in disabled children, sometimes girls are wearing in the ponytail their speech processors. But when everything is, but mostly children are using behind the ear processors, and we are trying to ask parents to really rely on that behind the ear solution, because in many cases children are wearing a hearing aid on the opposite ear, or they're becoming the bilateral users. So it is important to have the head between the two ears for the bilateral solutions, bimodal hearing, bilateral hearing. And that's why we are just encourage the parents to use their processors behind the ear, if possible.
Okay. Okay, Verena, would you like to add something?
Yeah, it's the same with us, but if you have very small children, then they have it at the collar too. Because when they lie or sleep or something in the car or something, it's not working well on the head. But we try to encourage them to use it behind the ear, or what Anita says, in the ponytail or something, so that you have the direction on them of the microphone as it should be.
Yeah. So if you have really, if the processor is in a kind of a funny place, whatever that is, but are you then still using natural, or are you then switching to Omni?
We are trying to use Omni when we are not sure when the microphones are.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
What the position of the microphone is. So only when we are sure that the processor is somewhere behind the ear.
Okay. Okay. Same for you, Verena. Right?
Yeah, it depends on how they wear it. If you can stack the processor here in front, then we leave it with the directional mode. If they are using it behind, then we take the omnidirectional mode. But I think perhaps the difference is not that much, because you have a lot of noise here from the shirts and all that, and I don't know if the difference with Omni and natural is that big when you have it here. So
right, I would just think that Omni is a safer choice in a sense, right? And I guess it's not such a long period of time. They grow up, and sooner or later their ears are solid enough really to be okay with the speech processor. Just another pledge to the audience: if you have questions, if you want to participate in the discussion, if there is anything you would like to contribute, please use the chat, and we'll respond to that immediately. Now, as we talk about deviating from your preferred mode, okay, what we've heard is very small children, baby BTE, processor position that deviates from the ideal position on the at the ear. Is there any other instance, or is there any other situation where you would deviate from your preferred mode, from natural mode?
Well, another one could be if you get the feedback from the parents or the therapist that they have the impression that the child don't react adequately to sounds from the rear or something. That's always a concern. Then or that they don't hear car noise or something, and they think that's dangerous. Then we'll give them the option to switch between the natural or the omnidirectional mode, but most of for the parents, so that they can try it at home. But most of the time, there is not really a difference. But we give them the option that they could try it. Yeah, because I think the natural microphone mode is not that directional that you don't hear anything from behind. So
exactly.
Anita?
That's exactly the point, that this natural microphone is not like a beamforming. It's like a mimicking the pinna, so it's a
Right.
natural hearing. But as far as some exceptions, we also switch on the omnidirectional microphone for children, for example, using the omnidirectional mode in the first implanted ear. For example, they're using older technology like Opus 2. And for example, after upgrade, they are not able to get used to this natural microphone. Some of them don't like upgrade. Very rarely, but there are some people who don't like changes, doesn't like changes. And if the one ear is with omnidirectional mode, then we switch only the other ear.
So you're not, but that's a really interesting question. So you're not using something that, at least as far as I know, is sometimes done in the hearing aid world, where there is omni on one ear and directional on the other ear, right? So that one ear hears around and the other ear is a bit more sensitive towards the front. You're not doing that, if
we are
I'm getting you right.
to keep it as symmetrical as possible, to get the opportunity for the auditory nervous system to fuse the information and to use the advantage of binaural hearing.
Yeah, Verena?
No, we don't do this as well, but I read studies where it's an improvement with one omnidirectional and one natural side, but we don't do that.
You don't do that.
Yeah.
You don't do that. There is an interesting question in the chat. Can I see that again from and it relates to off-the-ear processors. When using rondo or canso, which is the cochlea of the ear processor with children, isn't it better to use omnidirectional? So that's now related to the rondo processor. That will be the rondo 3 in the MED-EL world, where you have ASM3. So if you're using an off-the-ear processor, generally speaking, Verena or Anita, would you still, or are you still using directional microphones, or are you there using omnidirectional microphones?
Well, we don't do the single unit processors in children.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We are
Anita?
also trying to encourage parents to use behind the ear processor in very small children, but we have some who really wanted to have this rondo for their children, and we switched the natural microphone.
Okay.
Rondo as well.
Yeah. Okay, maybe I can offer a comment here. We're just doing, I know of a study that is undertaken in Hanover, where they compare speech perception with the Rondo 3 processor and the Sonnet 2 processor with directional microphones in adults. And results are exactly the same. So at least from a directionality point of view, if you want, yeah, the two are not different. Just because of the fact that the rondo is in a slightly, isn't it rondo 3 that, no, rondo, yeah, the rondo 3 is in a slightly different position on the head than the Sonnet 2, does not mean that the rondo 3 is less directional or in some way different in directionality than the Sonnet 2. And as an engineer, I can say, and with this coming from my workshop, the two processes are parametrized so that the directional patterns are the same on the head for both the Rondo 3 and the Sonnet 2. So at least from that point of view, there shouldn't be a difference to not use a Rondo 3 in children. But there is, of course, clinical aspects like, you know, the higher degree of activity in children and things like that, I guess. Sorry, does anybody from our experts, do you want to add something as far as that point is concerned? No? Now, can I just bring up one issue that was really mentioned to me very often when it comes to, or still is, when it comes to directionality in children. There is people out there that are concerned that with directional microphones, children don't develop as, I mean, in terms of speech perception and language, don't develop as quickly and strongly with directional microphones as with omnidirectional microphones. And the thinking is that with omnidirectional microphones, you hear all around, as you said, Verena, already. And with directional microphones, you're making it a bit too easy. Yeah, you're not challenging children enough I mean in speech perception terms, in speech and noise terms, and those kinds of things. Is that something that also played a role in your considerations, Verena, Anita?
I think that auditory development in CI is a really challenging process, knowing all the things that are not much to the natural hearing, knowing all the restriction, all the lacks and in auditory processing. But as far as natural microphone is concerned, it's not, as I said, very aggressive directionality. Still, patients are able to see around their head voices even from the back. It's only restricted, as Peter mentioned at the beginning, to high frequencies, that they are somehow less heard from the back than from the front. The other frequencies are like omnidirectional. So I think also that when normal hearing children develop, they also have this normal directionality, like the PINA imitating, because we have PINA and we have the same kind of directionality. So I think that children are not losing anything that way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, Verena?
Yeah, I think it's the same. You don't have to challenge them even more. I think the microphone mode, it's not that directional, and it's only a small piece in the puzzle. So I think it's more important how the parents and the people nearby react. And from the children, when they hear speech and you are not talking to them directly, they look at you and they turn to you. So I don't think they miss something with a natural mode.
Okay, we have one last question and I fully agree. I really think that life is hard enough for hearing impaired children. And yeah, I don't know. I think it would also reduce frustration, right? If you make it a bit easier to them and they are more inclined then to use the CI. But I'm not a clinician, really. It's now there is one last question in the chat, and I would really like to ask that question. And if we run a few minutes over time, please forgive me. How about adaptive mode with children? Is there any concern about the moving, roaming sound and understandability, concentration, school, classroom, etc.? Yes, you all talked, and we so far talked about natural directionality, which is fixed directionality. Do you have any opinion about adaptive directionality in children, Verena and Anita? Verena, you want to start?
Yeah. Well, we don't use the adaptive mode because we have some concerns. It's more directional, and it depends on the noise, how it reacts. And so we think it could be also confuse the children or distract them, and they are turning their head very often and something like that. So perhaps the situation is not really analyzed as it should be. So we don't use that. We offer them the option when they can just activate it themselves. So with another program when they are in school, but most of them do not switch the program then.
Right. Anita?
Well, as I showed you in my presentation, we did some trial with the experienced CI users, and the results are really encouraging, and most children were really happy about this adaptive intelligence. And as I said, we switched this adaptive intelligence to the mild mode, not too strong one. So in the mild mode, you have still a natural microphone. Not adaptive, it's not a beamforming, so the microphone is natural, but additionally you get this ambient noise reduction, transient reduction. And we, in experienced users, in upgrades, we switch it on because there are children who can decide whether they like it or not. But we think more and more about using this also in smaller children. And of course, more studies are needed. And the problem is how to evaluate the benefit from this.
Just to ask back, Verena, you were talking about adaptive directionality, right? Are you using adaptive intelligence in children?
No.
Sorry?
No.
Okay, although adaptive intelligence, as Anita said, is still on natural directionality, you're not using it.
No, we're not using it. We're a little conservative, I would say. But we do a study with adults, and it looks quite good. So perhaps we might do it in children, but not yet.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. It's we're slightly after 4 o'clock. A big thank you to our two experts. A big thank you to everyone. Let's conclude here. The last thing for me to do after saying thank you to everyone is just announce the next Experts Online. And the next Experts Online will take place on September 20, 3 o'clock in the afternoon again. And it'll be about standards. Why do we care? And this is about standards in fitting, standards in performance measurements, standards in CI care, and why are those standards needed, or why would be those standards needed? What's the benefits of those standards, and what's the problem with those standards? So if you're interested in standards, then please come back on September 20 at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And until then, I wish you a nice summer. Well, let's hope that spring is coming back at some point. I wish you all a nice summer. I am saying thank you again to Anita and Verena. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much to everybody, and goodbye.